After over 2.5 years, Russia continues to finance the war in Ukraine through the sale of its energy resources. In today's video, we're taking a closer look at who stopped buying Russian oil and which countries still do. First, let's take a look at who is buying Russian oil globally. From January 2023 to July 27, 2024, China, India, and Turkey bought the most Russian oil.
The largest buyers of Russian oil, who fill the vacuum left by the European market, are in fact two countries, China and India. While in the case of China, this increase in oil imports from Russia is obvious and stable, in the case of India, the increase between 2021, i.e. the level before the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine, and, for example, 2023, is drastic. This is new import that India initiated because it spotted a great opportunity. There was a lot of cheap Russian oil on the global market that it could import. On the other hand, Russian oil is also going to countries that might previously have seemed quite unlikely destinations, such as Pakistan. If I'm not mistaken, in 2023 there was the first ever shipment of Russian oil there. It also reaches other countries where it has never been imported. The same goes for fuels, because the EU embargo applies not only to oil but also to fuels, such as diesel. Russia supplied 40% of the EU import of this fuel. Today, that diesel goes, for example, to Africa, South America, or Turkey. Russians simply tried to find new customers wherever they could.
The European Union as a whole is in fourth place. But how is that possible? After all, the EU has an embargo on Russian oil. And that's true. The embargo is there and it works, but there are exceptions for these three countries: the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. They are all landlocked countries and have no possibility to quickly replace supplies from Russia. That's why they were given permission to continue to import Russian oil. However, the European Union has declared it wants to move away from Russian hydrocarbons. This means that these three countries should search for other import options. They should, but not all of them are actually doing it.
And while in the context of the Czech Republic, for example, the government in Prague is making a significant effort to diversify supplies, that is, to expand the capacity of the oil pipeline from the south. In the case of Hungary and Slovakia, their intentions regarding diversification are not clear. Despite the fact that the European Union as a whole declares it is willing to move away from Russian supplies altogether, in the case of these two countries, these declarations are not so clear. In the case of Hungary, this is especially visible. The transport of oil still takes place, as well as gas. Both are supplied to these countries from Russia. And the Hungarians still declare they're willing to maintain trade relations with the Russian Federation.
Poland does not import Russian oil. It's prohibited by law. However, Viktor Orbán claims that Poland still buys Russian oil, but through intermediaries. At the same time, he said that Poland has the most hypocritical policy in Europe.
Here Orbán claimed that Poles were willing to buy this oil through intermediaries. I would say that his statement implied that the Polish side knows that it's Russian oil that someone is buying, and they're concealing this fact. It seems to me that this is too far-fetched an assumption, that this is simply not true.
Indeed, there is a practice of hiding the origin of Russian oil. This is done, for example, through transshipments from one tanker to another, or by mixing Russian oil from somewhere else. However, in the case of oil purchased by Poland, the possibility of this procedure is very small.
It's possible, but the probability of this is minimal, considering what kind of tankers arrive at Polish ports and how sensitive this issue is in the country. Even if this is true, we can assume that the share of this Russian oil in the total mix, in the total imports to Poland, is very small. As I said, the chances of this actually occurring are very low.
Russian oil has been in the headlines recently for yet another reason. Ukraine has extended sanctions on Lukoil. Why is this important? Let's look at this map. Russian oil is delivered to the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary via the southern Druzhba pipeline, which runs through Ukraine. The decision to extend sanctions on Lukoil includes the transit of crude through Ukraine's territory. And this means that oil from Lukoil is no longer flowing to Hungary, Slovakia, and the Czech Republic. The problem is that Lukoil supplied about 30% of crude to the Slovaks and the Hungarians. This decision made by Ukraine has caused outrage among the prime ministers of these countries. But why did Slovaks and Hungarians continue to buy Russian oil? Why didn't they just take the steps to become independent? After all, shouldn't they have expected that the transit of Russian crude via the southern Druzhba pipeline might ultimately stop? Our expert knows the answer.
It's not that these countries are dependent only on Russian oil. They have for many years had an alternative connection to Croatia, to the Croatian oil terminal, and actually have enough capacity to import non-Russian oil. Russian oil, on the other hand, is currently cheaper, and this is beneficial for these countries. It's basically one Hungarian group, the MOL Group, which includes the Slovak oil company Slovnaft. They are subject to a special windfall tax, thanks to which these profits from the sale of Russian oil actually go to the budgets of these two countries. So in that sense, it reduces the motivation to change their purchasing route, and in the end, it fits into this whole picture of close energy relations between Hungary and Russia in particular, but to some extent also Slovakia and Russia, which today is an exception on the European scale. Hungary and Slovakia are paying the price for their very risky game. Of course, they have made temporary gains from importing Russian oil, which is cheaper, but they put themselves at risk. It was clear from the beginning that either something would physically happen to this infrastructure, or there would be an escalation of energy disputes between Russia and Ukraine. During wartime, this is obvious, and today these two countries are paying the price.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, take a look at our other videos right here.